Beginning in 2010, the bodies of multiple women were discovered along Ocean Parkway in Gilgo Beach in Long Island, New York. Most of the victims were young sex workers, and their disappearances had gone cold. But when Shannon Gilbert disappeared in May 2010, police started hunting in the area along the highway, and they began finding the bodies. It was another 13 years, though, before police charged someone with the crime. In a shocking turn of events, they fixed on a very unlikely person, an unassuming architect, Rex Heuermann. Police linked Heuermann to the crimes through cell phone data, a vehicle, and even a pizza box, but most importantly, through cutting edge DNA evidence. Now, Heuermann is in jail and he is awaiting trial for the murder of these seven women. Two brand new rulings have come out in his case, one on DNA and one on how the case is going to be tried. And both of them are going to make it even harder for Heuermann to beat back these charges. The most important ruling is that the jury is going to get to hear about DNA evidence that links Heuermann to the bodies of the women. Rex Heuermann asked the court to bar that evidence, to keep the jury from hearing anything about it. But the court has said no, and the court says the evidence is going to come in. So let's talk about what exactly is this evidence. The bodies themselves that police found were severely damaged. Now, three of the bodies have been mutilated. Police are hinting that may have been very purposeful. When Heuermann was arrested, police searched his home and found what they believe is a planning document. And in that document was written, remove head and hands. Now, over time and with the advancement of DNA, more victims were identified. But now that so much time had passed, how are police going to link Heuermann to the crimes? The state is keeping a lot of its evidence very close to the vest. We don't have nearly all of it, but we do know that the state found something critical on six of the bodies, and that is human hairs. But there was a problem with those hairs. They were rootless. Now, when a hair gets pulled out of your head with the root attached, forensic scientists can extract DNA from that root. But until now, scientists have not been able to extract DNA from the hair shaft itself without the root. Some DNA is available, but there are gaps in it. Until now, scientists have not felt that they could analyze that DNA. But the prosecutors going after Rex Heuermann say all of that has changed. A California scientist, Dr. Richard Green, has invented a software, IBD Gym, that prosecutors say can test the hair shaft even without the root. And using that software, prosecutors say they have found information that is nothing short of bombshell, that hairs found on the bodies of six of the seven women link Rex Heuermann, his wife, and his daughter to the bodies. Now, that would be all of the victims except one, Melissa Barthelemy. You may be wondering about the suggestion from prosecutors that there were hairs not just from Rex Heuermann, but from his wife and his daughter. Were they involved? Early on, there were rumors abounding. An attorney representing several of the victims made it clear he was suspicious of at least Rex Heuermann's wife. We don't have a definitive answer to that. Prosecutors did determine that Rex Heuermann may have met with some of the victims while his wife and his children were out of town. But it's unclear how long he kept the women. So that in and of itself probably would not be a 100% alibi. We do know two things for sure. The first thing is that the daughter was just a child or perhaps young teen when these women were killed. And the second thing we know is that prosecutors have not charged Rex Heuermann's wife or his daughter, and they haven't even hinted that they plan to do that or in any way believe they were involved. Now, Rex Heuermann has asked the court to keep out this new DNA testing done using IBD Gym, and the court has ruled against him twice now. The stakes could not be higher for Rex Heuermann. It will be nearly impossible to beat this evidence at trial. If it comes in, That enormously increases the chances that Rex Heuermann will be convicted as one of the worst, most depraved serial killers of a generation. But the stakes are not just high for Rex Heuermann. If IBD Gym is accurate, this opens the door in many other cases. Think of all the unidentified victims who may be identified. And of course, of all the killers from very long, very cold cases, long ago cold cases, who may still be out there and who may be convicted if prosecutors can prove they left DNA at the crime scene. If IBD Gym is accurate, we can identify criminals and achieve justice that has been denied for decades. But if IBD Gym is inaccurate, then an untold number of innocent people might go to jail convicted for horrific crimes that they never committed. So it is critical that we get this right. And right here in the middle of the Long Island serial killer trial, we are in the midst of a battle that has enormous repercussions in this case, but also in hundreds of cases solved and still yet to be solved all around the world. So let's talk about what happened. Dr. Richard Green is a professor of biomolecular engineering at the University of California in Santa Cruz. He has 16 patents in DNA technology issued in the United States, and he owns a company called Astria Forensics. Dr. Green's company extracted DNA from the hairs found on the Gilgo Beach victims, and then they ran it through a software that Dr. Green created, that computer program called IBD Gym. Prosecutors say that the software proves that the hairs on the bodies came from Rex Heuermann or his wife or daughter. The defense says this is something brand new, that nobody other than Dr. Green's company uses IBD Gym. The program isn't reliable, they say. They cite several reasons for that. First, they say the program compares the findings from the hair shaft to something called the 1,000 Genomes Project. Despite the fact that it has 1,000 in the name of it, the 1,000 Genomes Project analyzed DNA of 2,054 people from around the world. The defense says that is not representative. That's not enough people to give us a true, accurate representation. Secondly, the defense says that IBD Gym works backwards, that traditional DNA testing looks at whether a randomly chosen person could be confused with the evidence sample. But the IBD Gym program turns that process around, and it starts with the DNA evidence and looks at the chances that the source of the evidence is one of the 2,504 people tested in the 1,000 Genomes Project. And third, the defense says that the IBD Gym program may make mistakes when it looks at evidence that is a mixture of DNA from more than one source. The defense had to acknowledge that the technology had been peer reviewed, and so had the use of the 1,000 Genomes Project. But they did cast a little shade on the peer review process, suggesting it wasn't a truly scientific review, that instead friends who were scientists were basically giving each other likes on their scientific work, to give it an equivalent. Now, the judge clearly was impressed by the prosecution's experts and not at all impressed by the defense experts. Science has reached the point that we need experts to explain some of the key evidence in legal cases. But our legal system has reached the very bizarre stage that both sides have to bring in experts. So the experts on one side say the evidence is great, and the experts on the other side say the exact opposite of that. It's frankly a mess of a system right now, one that all comes down to which side's experts you believe. And there's no question which way the court was going here. The court believed the prosecution and not the defense experts. So the court pointed out that one of the defense side's two experts took 10 years to finish up his college degree and still has not written the thesis to finish up his master's degree. You know, the other defense expert was clearly more credentialed, but had not worked in a forensic crime lab or taken a crime scene sample. The prosecution brought three experts, including Dr. Green, the inventor of the IBD Gym software. They all felt the software had been tested and peer reviewed and was accurate. The court weighed in, went with the prosecution. To be clear, the jury does not have to agree with that. This hearing was an attempt by the defense to keep the jury from hearing about the DNA evidence at all. The court merely ruled that the DNA evidence will come in, meaning the jury is going to hear it. At trial, the prosecution will probably use the same three witnesses that the court heard to say that the DNA evidence and testing was accurate and reliable, and the defense is going to use probably the same two witnesses to say just the opposite. Ultimately, the jury is going to have to make the decision. They are going to have to decide a highly technical scientific question that is entirely outside their ability to answer. And based on my experience, they're going to do it just like the judge did, which is they are going to decide which set of experts they believe. And if the judge's reaction is any indication, it's going to be a pretty easy call for the jury. And that's very bad news for Rex Heuermann.